Does it feel like your prostate discomfort just keeps creeping worse month after month, no matter what you try? Does it seem like nobody has ever actually explained why, instead of just telling you to expect it? A large share of men past 60 carry an enlarged prostate for years before anyone explains to them why it keeps happening. I was one of them. And here's what doesn't add up. You'd think the swelling would just level off once you got used to it, settle into something predictable. Mine didn't. It kept creeping month after month, no matter what I changed. I'm 83. There was a stretch of years where I couldn't get through my grandson's football games on the TV without getting up 4-5 times before halftime, my son-in-law giving me that look like he was counting too. In the next few minutes, I'll tell you exactly why that pressure kept building, and what finally eased it without the trade-off my doctor first laid on the table. These days I sit through a full game, start to finish, popcorn bowl balanced on my knee, without once eyeing the hallway. I'm not saying that to brag. I'm saying it because for a long stretch I assumed that discomfort was just the entrance fee for being an old man in a recliner, and I was wrong about that. The pressure didn't arrive all at once. It built the way a slow leak builds, a heaviness low in my belly that got worse the longer I sat. A dull, crowding feeling like something down there had simply outgrown its space. Sunday afternoons with the grandkids over, watching the game, used to be the best hours of my week. They slowly turned into an exercise in math. How long until the next commercial break? How many ounces of that lemonade could I actually afford to drink? I stopped taking the aisle seat at church because it meant climbing over 4 people every time. I started parking as close to the door as I could at the hardware store, not because my legs were failing me, but because I needed to know the bathroom was close. Nobody in my family knew the real reason behind any of it. I just quietly rearranged my whole life around a body part I'd never given a second thought to for 60 years. When I finally sat down with my doctor and admitted how bad it had gotten, he told me plainly what I was dealing with. A prostate that had been slowly enlarging for years, which is common enough in men my age that he sees it in nearly every exam room he walks into. What he said next is the part that actually stopped me. He told me the standard next step, the pill most men my age get handed, works by lowering testosterone throughout my entire body to shrink the gland down. And then he paused, the way doctors do when they know the next sentence is going to land hard, and told me that pill comes with a real chance of losing my drive, my ability to perform in the bedroom, sometimes for good even after stopping it. I sat in that office and felt something drop in my chest that had nothing to do with my prostate. I'd been married to my wife for 51 years, and we still held hands at the dinner table. The idea that fixing one part of my body might cost me that part of my marriage wasn't a trade I was ready to make quietly, and I told him so. That fear followed me home and sat with me for weeks. I'd lie there next to my wife at night, running the math over and over. Was the relief worth what I might lose? I started dreading the follow-up appointment more than I dreaded the pressure itself, and I know now how many men quietly make that same choice and never say a word about it, not even to their own doctor. Here's what doesn't add up if you assume every treatment works the same way. That pill doesn't act locally on the prostate at all. It works by turning down a hormone throughout your whole body. Everywhere testosterone does its job, not just in the one gland causing you trouble. That's why the side effect isn't rare or freak accident. It's the direct, expected consequence of how the medicine works. Your body doesn't get to keep testosterone doing its job everywhere else while just the prostate calms down. It all drops together. For years, one number ran my life, the PSA. It would tick up a point and I'd lie awake the whole night, certain it meant the worst, picturing the biopsy, the knife, the end of everything. Then someone finally told me the truth no doctor had. That number doesn't measure cancer. It measures your prostate. And as we age, it climbs mostly because the gland is simply enlarging, benign, swollen, and uncomfortable, not the worst. The number was scaring me half to death over something ordinary. And the prescriptions they push to shrink it? They can flatten your drive completely, soften everything, quietly take the man right out of you. I wasn't willing to trade that away. There's a gentle way to support that gland, keep it comfortable, a healthy size, without surrendering any of that. Keep getting checked every year, of course. At 83, that number doesn't own me anymore. I finally have peace. Let me show you what gave it to me in this video. And if you want the simple support I personally use, There's a free presentation linked in the description below. What my doctor explained next is the piece nobody had ever laid out for me before in all my years of sideways comments and quick nods at checkups. Inside prostate tissue specifically, testosterone gets converted into a much more potent hormone called DHT. And it's DHT, not testosterone itself, that actually drives the gland to keep growing. The pill works by blocking that conversion everywhere in the body, which is exactly why it doesn't stay contained to the one place causing the problem. But research has documented that certain plant compounds, specifically the polyphenols concentrated in green tea, particularly one called EGCG, can interfere with that same testosterone to DHT conversion locally, right there inside prostate tissue, without meaningfully lowering testosterone circulating through the rest of the body. The mechanism stays local to the gland instead of sweeping through every tissue that depends on that hormone doing its job. That distinction is the whole thing. It's not a weaker version of the same approach, it's a fundamentally different target, one that leaves the rest of my body alone. I remember sitting in that office asking him twice to repeat it because it sounded almost too convenient to be true. He walked me through it slower the second time. So the prostate has its own local concentration of the enzyme that drives this conversion, and that's where certain polyphenols appear to interrupt the process, rather than shutting the whole hormonal system down from the top. He was careful, and I want to be just as careful passing it along to you. This is not a cure, it's not going to erase an enlarged prostate overnight, and it doesn't replace anything your doctor has prescribed you. It's something that supports comfort in that gland specifically, without the systemic trade-off that had kept me up at night for weeks. I didn't build my routine around a cup of tea alone, and I don't want to leave you thinking one habit does all the work. I built a small system, 3 pieces held together. The first was 2 to 3 cups of brewed green tea most days. Nothing exotic, just steeped properly and given time rather than rushed. The second was cutting back hard on the processed, fried, heavily salted food that had crept into my diet over the years. The kind that keeps the whole body running a low simmer of inflammation, which research has linked to worse prostate symptoms generally, on top of whatever else is driving the growth itself. The third was a short walk most evenings, nothing strenuous, just enough movement most days of the week to keep my whole system working the way it's supposed to, instead of sitting stagnant for hours at a stretch. None of those 3 pieces would have meant much sitting alone. It was holding all 3 steady, week after week, that actually changed how my Sundays felt. I won't pretend the first few weeks felt like anything at all. I kept waiting for some dramatic turn and got nothing but the same tea, the same walks, the same routine day after day, wondering if I was fooling myself. My wife caught me pouring a 3rd cup of tea one evening and asked, half joking, if I was trying to turn into an Englishman at 83. We laughed about it, but she also started brewing it with me most nights, which turned into its own small ritual neither of us expected. By the 4th week, the pressure showed up later in the afternoon than it used to. By the 8th week, some Sundays it barely registered at all. I kept a little notebook by my recliner, nothing formal, just a line most evenings, mostly so I couldn't talk myself into progress that wasn't really there. Reading back through those pages months later is what convinced me this wasn't wishful thinking. Last month, I helped my son-in-law re-roof half his garage, up and down that ladder for 6 hours straight on a Saturday, without once needing to climb down for anything but water. He mentioned it to my daughter before he mentioned it to me. I think about a man named Garland who wrote to me after an earlier video, 76, spent 38 years running a hardware store counter, who told me he'd been handed that same pill at his last checkup and had quietly decided not to fill the prescription because of exactly the fear I'd sat with in that office myself. He'd read everything he could find and landed on the same conclusion I had. He wanted relief that didn't put his marriage on the table as collateral. When he heard about the local mechanism, the idea that something could ease the gland without sweeping through the rest of his body, he told me it was the first explanation that actually made sense of why the pill worked the way it did, and why an alternative might not carry the same cost. Garland started with just the tea because changing his whole diet at once felt like too much at 76, then folded in the evening walks a month later. He said the change wasn't sudden, it eased in gradually, week over week, until one Sunday he realized he'd watched an entire ballgame with his grandsons without once thinking about his prostate at all. He told me that was the moment that mattered more than any measurement could have. Not a number on a chart, just being fully present in his own living room again, without his body pulling his attention somewhere else. If you're on a prescribed medication for your prostate, please hear this clearly. Nothing here replaces that medication or your regular checkups, and you should never stop or adjust anything your doctor has prescribed without talking it through with them first. Keep seeing your doctor for your regular prostate exams without exception. Understanding this local mechanism doesn't replace that conversation. It just gives you something honest to bring into the room with you. What I want you to walk away with is this. Relief and your intimate life don't have to sit on opposite ends of a scale the way that first conversation with my doctor made it feel. For a lot of men, there's a real difference between something that quiets your whole hormonal system and something that works specifically where the problem actually lives. That's not me telling you to throw out what your doctor prescribed. It's me telling you there's a conversation worth having with him about it. Here's what I settled on: a few drops a day. And let me tell you why it works. One compound calms one signal, but a swollen prostate answers when several are calmed at once. The growth signal, the inflammation, the pressure inside it. So what I use concentrates them, working as one, the way the research actually uses them, not a single ingredient pretending to be enough. A gland that stays comfortable and a healthy size, fewer trips, and the quiet of no longer fearing that number. It leaves the man fully intact, none of that flattening the prescriptions can do. It's linked right under this video, go look for yourself. It won't replace your doctor or your yearly check. It supports the biology right alongside them. I'm 83, and that number doesn't own me anymore. I think about the man I was in that doctor's office, feeling like I had to choose between comfort and the parts of my life that made me feel like myself. And I think about the man I am now, brewing tea with my wife most evenings, sitting through a whole football game without a second thought, still fully present in the marriage I've had for 51 years. That's the difference, not a miracle, just finally understanding what my own body needed instead of accepting the first trade-off I was handed. If you've ever been handed a treatment and quietly worried about what it might cost you somewhere else, tell me about it in the comments. I read every one myself. And if this kind of honest, plain-spoken explanation is useful to you, go ahead and subscribe. There's more of this coming every week.